What is the most extreme form of penny pinching you have ever witnessed? Finally, my parents split everything. My mom has her shampoo, my dad has his. Their own food, drinks, etc. Fast forward. My dad was sick and needed some Pepto-Bismol. He didn't have any. My mom measured out 15 milliliters, then divided that by the cost, and my dad paid her 23 cents or whatever it was.
That's a pretty unique way to handle things. I get that they want to keep everything separate, but when it comes to health, you'd think it would be different. It's just medicine at the end of the day. The whole money exchange for something like this feels a bit cold. Sometimes, it's good to put aside the divisions, especially when someone's not feeling well.
Guy had dinner with his wife but sat at separate tables. Had 2 coupons, but could only use 1 coupon per table. He told his wife, "But we'll sit at adjacent tables." Edit. This wasn't the Seinfeld episode, I didn't see that. This was my office mate. Edit 2. Yeah, how does it get like this? I read a great line once, forget who said it, never run after a train. Life is not supposed to be lived at that level.
That's an interesting situation. I mean, who knew dinner would have such strict rules? I guess it's a unique way to keep things separate, but also together. I can relate to that feeling of trying to make the best out of a situation, even if it seems odd. Life does throw some strange curveballs at us sometimes. The quote you mentioned really hits home, though. Just gotta roll with it.
I knew someone who once went to buy shampoo at a Walmart and didn't like that the bottle wasn't filled to the very top. Don't try explaining to her that bottles need room to expand during transport. So she unscrewed another bottle and poured it into the bottle she wanted to buy to top it off. Well, security cameras saw her doing this, and she was busted by the security officers. She got argumentative and combative and ended up being arrested, all for half an ounce of shampoo. Then she got kicked out of med school for stealing scrubs to wear because she was too cheap to buy real clothes.
That's a wild story. It's odd how someone can go to such lengths for something small like shampoo. I guess some people just don't think through their actions. The whole med school thing just adds to it. Getting kicked out for stealing scrubs? That's a pretty serious consequence for trying to save a few bucks. Makes you wonder what goes through some people's minds.
I worked at a Crystal when I was a teenager, and we had a guy come into the restaurant and want to call the police to press charges, theft by taking, he said, against me, because I shortchanged him by a single penny when he come by the drive-thru. The manager gave him the penny out of her own pocket and told him never to come back. My register at the end of my shift counted up dead on.
That's a strange experience. It's kind of wild how some people can get upset over small things. A penny really isn't worth all that trouble. It's good your register was fine, but I guess some people just want to make a scene. The manager had the right idea, though, getting him to leave. Sometimes it's best to just move on from those kinds of situations.
Used to work in a nightclub. This really shabby-looking guy, probably late 50s, would come in and just walk around looking for money people had dropped. One of the saddest things I've seen. All these young people having fun. Some poor lonely old guy walking around scouring the floor for money they dropped.
Yeah, I get that. It's rough when the vibe is all about fun, and someone is just lost in their own world like that. You can kind of feel the disconnect, right? It's like two different realities colliding. Makes you think about how people can be in such different places in life, even in the same space. Just a reminder of the hidden struggles people face.
I was working at Target when a woman came forward with an odd assortment of items. I rang them all up for her, and it totaled to just below $300. She asked me to hold on for a second and pulled out a plastic bag. It was one of those gallon-sized Ziplocs, and it was chock full of coupons and those $5 gift cards you can get through certain deals at Target. Apparently, she had called the store or a store ahead of time and had a list of what order to put each of the coupons through. I scanned them one by one. Now, when you use a coupon, if it won't work due to some reason like coupons limited to this amount, or only when buying such and such product, it will stop you. In this case, not a single one did. They all went through. Then she used the gift cards. She ended up paying 10 cents.
That sounds like an interesting day at work. It's kind of wild how some people are so into finding deals. I've seen folks bring in stacks of coupons, but that level of organization is just another level. The fact that everything worked out perfectly for her must have felt pretty good. I guess sometimes you just have to know where to look to get what you want for way less.
My grandmother goes for walks and picks up change when she sees it. She also looks for change in parking lots when she parks. Once she found that the change was cemented into the parking lot. She now has an ice axe in her trunk in case she has that trouble again. Edit: she did not buy an ice axe for the explicit purpose of getting change. She merely decided to keep one she had in her trunk rather than her garage, haha.
That's a pretty interesting story. Your grandmother sounds resourceful. It's a unique approach to finding change, and I like how she repurposed the ice axe. It's kind of funny imagining her using it for something so unexpected. It's good to see someone being creative and thinking ahead like that. Plus, it makes for a good conversation starter.
Years ago, I was employed by a manufacturing company with a dozen locations around the world. I was in the corporate headquarters. The CEO's base salary was around $600,000 per year, not including benefits and stock options and bonuses and such. He would have his secretary go to Costco and get a rotisserie chicken for his lunch. She then had to take it to the hot dog condiment area and load it up with the free-for hot dog sauerkraut. That would be a few days' lunch for him if he was paying out of his pocket. When he had an excuse to expense it, of course, it was a different story. It was maybe a year of this going on before Costco started keeping the sauerkraut behind the counter. That might have been a coincidence.
That's a pretty interesting take on corporate culture. I mean, a CEO making that much still trying to save on lunch like that is kind of wild. It seems like those little perks can really add up, even if it is just sauerkraut. You wonder what other odd behaviors go on behind the scenes in those kinds of jobs. Guess not every high salary translates to high-class choices.
My great-grandmother, who was born in 1915, reused ice cubes. All she ever drank, all anyone ever drank at her house was iced tea. When you were finished with your glass, she would rinse the ice cubes under the faucet real quick, then put them back in the freezer. She did this to save money. A remnant of the old icebox days, I suppose.
That's an interesting habit. It shows how value can be placed on even the smallest things. I can see how in tough times, every little bit counts. It's kind of a reflection of a different era when resources were scarcer. People today might find that odd, but there's something practical about it. I guess it just goes to show how traditions and frugality can stick around over generations.
My wife. I swear she was born in the Great Depression. Oh, how do I start? How about just the weirdest one? She saves all her empty deodorants for several months in a paper sack, and after she gets about a half dozen of them, she takes them apart, scrapes all of the dregs out with a knife, and then packs them down into one container and makes a Franken deodorant that lasts for another couple of weeks. We save about $4 a year doing this. I definitely love this crazy woman.
That's a unique way to recycle, I guess. It sounds like she really makes the most out of everything. I've seen some friends do similar stuff, but not with deodorant. It's kind of funny how some people have those quirks that just stick with you. It might seem odd, but it shows how resourceful she is. Saving money is always nice, even if it's just a few bucks.
So I was in line at my office cafeteria, and the woman 3 people in front of me pays in cash, gets her change, and walks off. As I finally get rung up a minute or so later, the woman bursts back in and says they shortchanged her demanded they interrupt ringing me up so they could give her the fourth penny she was due. Apparently, they shortchanged her a whole cent, and it was not only worth the extra minute or so it took to walk back and forth to the cashier, but also worth making a scene over.
That's kind of wild. Most people wouldn't bother over a penny. It's interesting how some take principles so seriously, even for small amounts. I guess for her, it was about being right more than the money. Makes you think about your own priorities in little everyday situations. Sometimes, letting things slide can save a lot of hassle.
Had a grown man ask me for a serviceman discount because he was an officer. His proof was a little plastic sheriff badge you get with children toy kits. I just stared at him, gave him his 10% discount on a $4 item. I did not want to argue with someone who would actually be willing to try this.
That's a wild story. I mean, a toy badge for a discount? Just goes to show some people will try anything. It's kind of funny but also a little sad. It's cool that you didn't make a scene about it though. Just let it go with the discount. Sometimes it's easier to just move on than deal with someone else's strange logic.
At a cheap $12, all-you-can-eat Korean barbecue place. After they ate, a couple demands to pay only $8 per meal because 1/3 of the meat choices are pork and they didn't eat pork. The menu is 1. Fish 2, chicken 3, beef brisket 4, bulgogi 5, spicy pork 6, bacon edit. I don't know if this place still exists, but another Redditor assures us that you can find competitive pricing in Los Angeles' Koreatown.
It's funny how people think they can negotiate something like that. I remember a time when a friend tried to haggle at a buffet over some shrimp they didn't like. The place clearly had a set price. It's just part of the deal. You go, eat what you want, and move on. In the end, they paid the full amount and didn't even finish their meal. Just how it goes, I suppose.
My dad told me a story of his friend who would never turn on the air conditioning in his car, but would never wind his windows down despite the harsh Australian heat during the summers, just so people would think he had the aircon on. Dad also told me that he'd also use only candles in his house as a source of light to save on electricity bills. But one night he accidentally set something on fire, and it did a decent amount of property damage that he then had to pay for. He makes over $75,000 a year after tax as well, according to my dad. Everyone in the company knows how much of a tight ass he is, but no one in the company knows what he's saving up for. All they know is that it's something big, which is what he tells everyone whenever they ask.
That's an interesting story. It says a lot about how some people approach money. Trying to save on bills to that extent can go too far, though. Using candles for light is a bit extreme, and it backfired on him. The whole not using air conditioning while trying to keep up appearances is kind of funny. People are curious about what he's saving for, but maybe it's just a mystery to keep things interesting.
When I first moved out of home, around 15 years ago, I lived in a 2-bedroom townhouse with 4 girls. Each of us took a bill, cable, gas, electricity, and water in our name. My roommate, called Sarah, cause that is her name, came up to me one day late at night when I was engaged in studying /MSN chat on the computer in my room. "Sarah, the gas bill is here. It's $2. Me. Okay, so I owe you 50 cents. I don't have any cash on me. Sarah, you actually owe me 58 cents. I split the cost of the stamp to mail in the payment between the 4 of us. I could take a check if you have one. Me. She also shared a bedroom with our other roommate, and they insisted on getting bunk beds. Sarah got the bunk bed from IKEA and assembled a few days before they both moved into the room. The bed was, say, $100 including tax. Sarah told roommate that she owed her $65. Roommate said, "Why the extra $15? Sarah said because she drove from her parents' house to assemble the bed, and she split the cost of gas for her driving. TLDR, my roommate split the cost of a stamp between 4 people to mail a $2 gas bill.
That sounds like a classic college living scenario. People get weird over money when they think they're owed something, no matter how small. It's just funny how she wanted to break down every little cost like that. I remember similar situations with friends, where you'd end up discussing a can of soda and how to split the cost. Sometimes it's just better to keep it simple and not stress over the small stuff.
My dad used to take my brother and I to Burger King. We'd go through the drive-thru, and I would order a Whopper with cheese. He'd apologize to the drive-thru attendant and correct my order. "No cheese, please." We would drive home, and he would put a slice of Kraft American Singles onto my burger.
That's a nice memory. It's interesting how little things like that stick with you. The way your dad changed your order but still made it special. It shows he cared about your preferences, even if it was just a slice of cheese. Kind of cool how those simple moments can mean a lot over time. Fast food trips have a way of bringing people together, even in a small way.
There's a lady in my town that goes through the garbage. We know she isn't homeless, at least we think she isn't. She starts walking from one end of the town to the other, and will stop at every garbage and eat whatever she finds that is good enough. However, we have seen her leave the local gym, and she always has the best-looking gym equipment and gym bag. People have offered her money, and she has never once accepted it to my knowledge. She's just a lady that saves money by eating garbage.
That's an interesting story. It sounds like she has her own system figured out. People can be resourceful in unexpected ways. It's kind of surprising how she balances gym life with scavenging. Guess she's just doing her own thing, maybe living by her own rules. Definitely raises questions about what's going on in her life, though.
My ex's dad was vice president of a local college. He made approximately $80,000 a year base salary. When going out to eat anywhere, we were asked to play the game. The game is see who can get the cheapest item on the menu. He was serious. Edit, since so many people mentioned the money, this is just what he told us about. We didn't know actual figures. That's $80,000 base pay at a community college. He matched or exceeded that in bonuses each year. The area we live, he made enough to retire after working 5 years. He made a point to mention this when he was feeling especially snobby.
Seems like your ex's dad was really into the whole status thing. Playing a game to see who could get the cheapest item on a menu is a weird way to show off wealth. It sounds like he wanted to feel important while also pretending to be frugal. It's interesting how some people equate their job or salary to their worth. Makes you wonder what else was going on under the surface.
My great-uncle was a self-made millionaire in the furniture business, but he had grown up poor in the Depression, so he was a little bit beyond thrifty. Every time he received a new shipment of furniture in boxes, he wouldn't go straight to opening it up. He would take a pencil and carefully peel back the tape on each box, wrapping it around the pencil as he went. This could take forever out in the hot South Carolina sun. Also, he could reuse the tape later.
That's kind of interesting. Your great-uncle definitely had a unique approach to saving. I guess growing up poor shapes how you handle things later in life. It's something you don't really think about, being that meticulous over tape. But I get it, he was probably thinking about every penny. I wonder what else he did to make the most of what he had.
My dad's friend won't poop at home. He waits till he gets to work or walks to a store so he won't have to use his TP. Edit, RIP inbox. I guess this isn't too uncommon. Me, I think of my bathroom at home as my office. It's where I get all my emails and whatnot taken care of. I get paid by the job, so I don't have the luxury of pooping on someone else's dime. It costs me more to poop at work than at home.
It's kind of funny how some people have those quirks. I get the whole comfort of home thing. I remember a friend who would drive to a gas station just to avoid his own bathroom. It felt like a long detour just to do his business. For me, My bathroom is my quiet place where I can just chill for a moment. Don't see the point in making it complicated.
My liquor store has a customer who price matches a 4-pack of beer every day from $2.99 to $2.77, which isn't too bad. But he never brings enough money. Instead, he goes up and down asking the cashiers if they had any spare change left by customers earlier in the day to reach his total. He always shows up in the last 10 minutes of business to maximize the chances of generous strangers to take advantage of.
I know a guy like that. Always short on cash but somehow manages to get by. He usually hangs around the store, looking for change or a good deal. It's kind of amusing seeing him hustle for a few cents, trying to charm the cashiers. I guess he's like a regular fixture now. The last-minute rush definitely makes his routine more interesting, though.
I was in the gents of a London Underground station once. One with a urinal that's a tiled trench against the wall. I'm finishing up my business, and a guy spots a penny in the urinal. He reaches down and picks up said penny, wiping it off with his handkerchief. He sees me staring and says, "Waste not, want not." I think this is definitely erring on the extreme side of things.
That's an interesting encounter. You don't really expect to see someone pick up a penny from there. It's a bit surprising how some people value money, even in those situations. I guess it reflects how different folks have their own views on what's worth it. There's definitely a line between saving and being a bit too frugal. Just makes you think about priorities.
My best friend grew up with the sort of parents represented in this thread. There are many stories, all of them rather sad, being hot or cold, getting food poisoning from expired food, etc., but yelling at a small child on Christmas Day for accidentally tearing the wrapping paper has to take the cake. Had to be saved and reused to save money. They own 4 houses.
It's tough when parents have those kinds of priorities. I remember a friend who had a really similar situation. Got yelled at for small things, like not finishing a meal or making a mess. It's wild how some people can be so strict over meaningless stuff. Meanwhile, they seem to be doing fine financially. It doesn't add up sometimes, you know? Just makes you wonder about what really matters.
My dad took me to Goodwill and told me I could pick anything out I wanted for my birthday gift. Within reason. Would be driving along with me in the passenger seat and pull over on the highway, sending me to fetch whatever shiny thing he saw in the brush. Usually a soda can, but sometimes a Craftsman tool. Would go to Sears and swap out the Craftsman tool for a new one and then try to sell the new tool to a pawn shop. When he or I cooked, would insist that we turn the knob for the cooktop coil only in the down direction. Do not pass high. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Would always park up at the top of a hill or higher into the parking lot and use the rolling motion to jumpstart the car when we left. Would use the oven as storage since it was so inefficient. I can't think of any more right now, but there's been a whole lifetime of this stuff.
That sounds like an interesting way to grow up. Your dad had some unique methods for sure. It's cool how he found value in things most people would overlook. The cooktop rule is pretty practical, and that car jumpstart trick really shows creativity. It's neat that you have so many memories tied to those little quirks. They probably shaped your perspective on life in some unexpected ways.
So, I work at a bingo hall for charity. Anyways, one of our regulars hit a $7.5 million scratch-off ticket, but you have to go to the Capitol to claim anything over $1 million. So, news comes back that she let her son claim the lottery ticket. After a few weeks, she shows back up. The reason she let her son claim the money? She wanted to keep receiving her disability check every month.
That's an interesting situation. You know, some people have their priorities. She probably thought she was being smart by keeping her benefits. It's kind of wild how money can complicate relationships too. I wonder how her son feels about it. It must be a strange dynamic knowing that he won a fortune while she still relies on those checks. Choices like that can really shape a family.
There's a major GE facility in Minden, Nevada, that makes instrumentation for wind farms called Bentley, after the man who started it and sold it for GE for probably $1 billion. Mr. Bentley was extremely hardworking, dedicated, and notoriously frugal. When those state quarters were launching, Mr. Bentley put up flyers to sell some that he had for 30 cents. Mr. Bentley, who made hundreds of millions of dollars, trying to make a nickel by selling a quarter.
It's interesting how some people stay grounded no matter their wealth. Mr. Bentley worked hard, built a successful company, and then went to great lengths to make a small profit. Selling those quarters seems like a quirky move for someone with so much money. It shows that sometimes people hold on to old habits, even when they don't need to. His story is kind of a reminder about values and perspective.
My grandfather has some frugal methods. He used to hang up tea bags to dry and would only allow people to have one biscuit when they visit. This has been solved by people taking him biscuits and tea bags whenever they visit. However, visitors must make their own tea if they want a good cuppa. He will use the same tea bag in as much as 10 cups if he is making them at the same time. He now has a massive cache of tea and biscuits. You can still only have one biscuit unless you bring a packet. He also wears clothes until they're falling apart. He has a wardrobe full of new clothes family have given him over the years, but he hasn't yet got round to wearing them. He won't waste them. Me and my cousin and aunt were helping him tidy up one day when we found carrier bags full of money under his bed. The old dude said, "That's for you lot when I'm gone." We made him put in a bank and spend it. We convinced him that family fallout over inheritance, leaving nothing, was the kindest thing he could do. LOL.
That's interesting. Your grandfather sounds pretty set in his ways. It's funny how he has all that money but still won't change his habits. Using the same tea bag for 10 cups is extreme, though. It's nice that you and your family talked him into putting that cash in the bank. The idea of him leaving nothing sounds a bit harsh, but I guess it's good you're looking out for him.
I worked at a JB Hi-Fi, kind of like Best Buy for you American people, I think, in the telco section. 142-degree day, 107.6 for people using Fahrenheit. I serve a woman who wanted a landline phone. The one she picked, she claimed to have seen at one of the other JB Hi-Fis for $2.50 cheaper. I called the store and they confirmed it. It was an error they corrected, but since she had seen it at that price, I was obligated to match it. To do so, I had to get a manager's approval. So I paged him, but we were extremely busy, and he said he'd be about 5 minutes. Now, I understand that $2.50 is a lot to some people. But when she heard she'd have to wait 5 minutes, she said, "You need to tell him to hurry up, my toddler is in the car." Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. She left her toddler alone in a car on a dangerously hot day and wasn't going to leave the store until she'd saved her $2.50.
That's a wild story. People can be really strange about money sometimes. I get that $2.50 is important for some, but leaving a kid in a hot car is a whole other level. It's good you managed to help her out, but it's kind of alarming what some will do for a small discount. Just shows how priorities can get messed up in the moment. Not sure how that all ended.
A friend in college days would always ask to bum a smoke from any number of us at any of our get-togethers or parties through the years. It was always one excuse after another as to why he didn't have his own. One night, as he was leaving and we walked him out, all talking together, he absent-mindedly pulled his own pack of cigarettes out and lit one up, right after bumming at least a good 10 to 15 off everyone else through the night, since he didn't have any, confirming what we all suspected all along.
That friend was always mooching smokes at parties. He had a good excuse every time about why he didn't have his own. Then one night, as we were saying goodbye, he just casually pulled out his own pack. It was a funny moment, finally proving what we all suspected. We all had a good laugh about it later. Just goes to show how some people play the game.
This doesn't hold a candle to some of the other things people have posted here, but at the small company where I work, the office manager is very cheap. One day, she was running around yelling, "Who has the box of staples?" Yes, the box of staples. In an office with more than 20 people, she would dole them out one row of staples at a time. I asked her, "How much can a box of staples cost?" If you got one for everybody who has a stapler, you wouldn't have to worry about it again for years. Later that week, she handed me a box of generic staples. I asked how much they cost. She hung her head and said 69 cents.
Sounds like a classic cheap boss moment. It's wild how some people can get so fixated on tiny expenses. I remember a similar situation at a friend's job where they restricted paper usage to save money. Everyone ended up printing on the same sheet multiple times. It was a hassle, and honestly, it didn't save much. Sometimes, they just need to let go a bit.
The owner of the fast food joint I work at takes the save a penny change, trades it in for silver change in the register, and pockets it. It is absolutely disgusting and pathetic. You're making thousands a day, but have to grab every last cent. Myself and others I work with take all but 4 cents from there and stick it in the donation boxes outside the drive-through window for the children's hospital before he gets there, so there's nothing to trade in. Edit, to all those saying he doesn't make thousands a day, he owns multiple restaurants in the area and has a hand in many other ventures, so his sales are well in the thousands a day. I realize that that doesn't mean he is ending the day with thousands in profit, but I was making a point.
It's interesting how people act when it comes to money. In my old job, one of the managers would pocket small change too. It's weird to see someone who seems to have it all still being so greedy. We ended up doing something similar, collecting spare change for a local charity. It felt good to take a stand, even if it was kind of sneaky. Just goes to show how some people prioritize their gains.
In our family, we're only allowed to eat 3 times a day: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Eating any more than that is considered wasteful. So even if you wake up in the middle of the night hungry, you're supposed to go back to sleep and wait until breakfast the next day. I never really thought it as weird, but when I mentioned it on Reddit, people seem to think we were crazy. We have normal-sized portions for every meal. We're not constantly hungry. My parents are not being neglectful.
That sounds pretty strict but also kind of traditional. I guess it's interesting how different families have their own rules. I grew up with set meal times too, but we could snack if we wanted. It could feel tough sometimes, especially late at night. But your family seems to have a system that works for you all. It's cool how those habits shape our experiences.
My family lives pretty comfortably. Not rich, but we never had to worry about money. We went on vacation in Florida and bought some peaches while we were driving through South Carolina. Get to Florida and realized we bought way too many peaches, so my mother decided she would make a pie. The problem was that we didn't have any sugar, and they didn't want to buy a whole bag of sugar for one pie. That entire week, we would take every single pack of sugar we could find in restaurants until we had enough sugar to bake that goddamn pie. It was a delicious goddamn pie, though.
That's a pretty relatable story. I mean, who hasn't tried to get creative when you're short on supplies? Taking all those sugar packets is a classic move, though. It's funny how those little things can turn into a memorable family moment. And hey, the pie turned out great, so it was worth it in the end. Seems like a solid vacation story to look back on.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love,